This is George Popovici. Welcome to my channel, Angels Walking With Us. Today, I have the distinct honor and privilege of interviewing Dr. Richard Horowitz and his beautiful wife, Lee. Doc needs no introduction. Everybody in the Lyme disease community knows him. Doc has co-authored the tick-borne illness report that was sponsored by the Health and Human Services Department that was sent up to Congress. He's seen on national news outlets. He continues to treat folks who have Lyme disease and chronic illnesses, researches COVID-19, and more recently is about to release an exciting book on the environment, the Starseed Revolution. And I'm going to let Doc speak to that. So we're going to cover a breadth of information. And now here's Dr. Horowitz.
George, it's great to be here. And I think you know my wife, Lee, right?
Hey, Lee, great to see you. You look fantastic.
Thank you so much. Wonderful to be here. I have to credit my husband to my state of well-being and vibrance of health, because I've been his, MSIDS gal for the last 20 years, meaning I followed his MSIDS 16-point model in Lyme disease and co-infections and immune dysfunction, mitochondria and GI and everything. So I'm so grateful. His last Lyme treatment is double dapsone treatment. I did that 3.5 years ago, and I've not needed any further Lyme treatment since then. So I just want to mention that that's a really great development that's my husband's come up with in the last several years.
What a fantastic story. And one thing that I really appreciate about Doc, being his patient myself, is the fact that he is a groundbreaking physician, and he studies and applies many areas of medicine that most physicians won't even consider or shun. And that's what makes Doc such a special person. And you're a living proof of that, Lee.
Thank you, George. I am one of many, due to his real, as you say, his perseverance, his willingness to go places where most, regular allopathic medical doctors dare not tread. And yet that's exactly what Lyme patients need. We need a doctor who is able to look from all sorts of perspectives and use lots of different things, herbs and homeopathy and antibiotics and diet and supplements, individualized, tailored for the person. So I feel very fortunate with you to have him both as my husband and as my doctor.
Fantastic. Doc, let's talk a few minutes about Lyme disease, what you've seen trending over the years, just an overall 30,000-foot view of the therapeutics and how you've come together in changing your protocols in your practice.
Yeah, it's a great question, George. So, I've been doing this now for almost 35 years. I've seen approximately 13,000 chronically ill patients whose story, unfortunately, is pretty much always the same, which is they end up going to 20 or 30 doctors for a chronic fatiguing musculoskeletal neuropsychiatric illness where they're anxious and they're depressed and they have memory concentration problems and they can't fall asleep and they're tired and they have migratory joint pain and muscle pain and nerve pain, tingling, numbness, burning, stabbing, right? I mean, they're all coming in with these symptoms, and unfortunately, most of the allopathic doctors don't really understand it. So in the last 30 years, I've been developing a model called the 16-point MSIDS model that Lee was talking about. And fortunately, this model addresses a lot of these chronic issues in patients. But the nice part is, if people suffer from chronic fatigue syndrome, myalgic encephalomyelitis, or fibromyalgia, and that, by the way, is 5% of the US population, and probably a lot of people have chronic Lyme who have those symptoms, or there's over 20 million Americans with an autoimmune disease. Lyme can cause autoimmunity, as can environmental toxins. 46.5 million Americans have preclinical Alzheimer's. They've now shown that Lyme disease and environmental toxins and viruses like herpes viruses, chlamydia pneumonia, have all been associated with Alzheimer's, apart from inflammation and diabetes and insulin and sleep disorders and things. So the nice part about this model is it's not really just for Lyme patients. it's really anybody with a chronic disease. So as you mentioned, my books, Why Can't I Get Better and How Can I Get Better? Even if you don't have Lyme, these books will probably help you to get help, because the 16-point model really applies to most people with chronic disease. But the real advances we've made in the last 7 or 8 years has been discovering that Lyme and Bartonella, which is a co-infection we frequently see with Lyme, they have biofilms, and they have what are called persistiforms, meaning they're dormant. They're not actively replicating in these biofilms. And we didn't know that until a couple of years back. And I developed a biofilm protocol and a Lyme protocol using dapsone, which, by the way, came almost from a spiritual approach, because when I saw the research coming out of Johns Hopkins, I know as long as we're on this podcast, we may as well bring this up. I looked at the Johns Hopkins research showing that this bug, Lyme, was like tuberculosis or leprosy. It was a persister bacteria. And I kind of opened in meditation and looked at the drugs that were used for it. And I always kind of wanted to use these meds because I had learned them at Mount Sinai years ago when I was doing HIV medicine 35 years ago. And I looked at dapsone, looked at the qualities, and I had this gut sensation, this like right brain intuitive hit that this drug was going to work well, because it hit the persisters, it lowers inflammation, it hits babesia, and it gets great penetration into the brain. And lo and behold, I used it, it was working. And then, God, the angels, whatever, had a patient accidentally take a double dose of the drug. I didn't ask them to do this. This is like medical synchronicity when the universe is providing the answers. This kid comes in and accidentally takes a double dose, is sick as a dog. I say, what are you taking? He said, dapsone twice a day. I went, oh, it's too much. Stop. He comes back in a month, and the kid who's been sick for 7 years is now well. And I watched him for a year stay well. And that's when I turned to Lee and I said, honey, I need you to be a medical guinea pig and try this. And now we've done it for hundreds of people. But I will tell you, this is where the spiritual aspect works, because I've opened, to answers. I've prayed for answers for these really sick people. And it's so interesting in medicine, watching how it comes forth. It's not like I came up with double dose dapsone. It's by people making a mistake, and my eyes and ears were open, looking for answers. And it goes back to what my spiritual teacher, Lama Gendon Rinpoche, told me getting out of med school, when I asked him the most important thing that I needed to know as a physician getting out. And he said, compassion. Just put yourself in people's shoes, do for others what you would want for yourself, and everything will go well. And that rudder for my ship has basically served me very well. I've just never given up, because, if I was sick, my wife was sick, but I was doing this before I even met Lee. But, knowing that that was the instruction, I must say, I don't know if I would have kind of done what I've done if it wasn't for those really great spiritual instructions that I received.
That is fantastic, Doc, because that is the basis of everything that I speak of. I have a little sign that I keep around. It's in every room in my house, says everything happens for a reason. So those inputs that we get from the spiritual realm have a huge impact. As a matter of fact, you're featured in my book, Angels Walking With Us, and we talk about the emotional component of illness, which is gigantic. So you know this because you've seen thousands and thousands of patients, and those patients that are distraught, upset, distressed, have a hard time. But once you're able to treat them and they respond, it all works together because their frame of mind gets better as well.
Absolutely. And this last book that I just wrote, Starseed Revolution, The Awakening, which is going to be released in a week, it also came out of the emotional distress of kids coming to my office. I was not looking to be a novelist in my lifetime. This is not what I was planning on doing. But as you said, these kids were coming in with climate grief. This was about 4 years ago. And they were getting over Lyme. They had done double dose dapsone. And I said to them, well, what are you going to do with your life? You going to school? No. You're going to get a job? No. And I said, why not? And they said, well, the world's going to end. Why should I bother, getting a job and going to school? And the universe, this is literally almost day after day, week after week, these kids starting coming in one after the other. And I don't need to tell you about the law of synchronicity. When you see synchronous events that happen one after the other, the universe is communicating a message. So I went into meditation. It was actually in this room where we're recording this interview. And I went into meditation and I prayed to my spiritual teachers. And I said, what do you want me to do for these kids with climate grief? And I heard, write a book. To which I responded in meditation, I'm a Lyme doctor. Why would anyone possibly want to read a climate book by a Lyme doctor? And I heard in meditation, no, 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 no. We want you to write a science fiction climate change book. To which I responded, I beg your pardon? You want me to do what? They said, oh, yes, and make it funny. And I said, just so I can be clear on my marching orders here, you want me to write a humorous science fiction climate change book to benefit the world and give the problems and solutions for the climate for all of these people who will never read a science book? And they said yes. And I sat down in meditation for about 6 months, and I downloaded literally just in 450-page manuscript, which although I wrote the book officially, I kind of wrote it in combination with my spiritual family. So I can't really take full credit. This thing just kind of popped and appeared. And it felt almost miraculous. And Lee read it. She was, of course, one of the first people to read it. And, I asked her opinion on it because some morning she'd be reading it laughing. And I asked her what was happening. And she said, honey, I think this is really going to be a big hit. It's really funny. People are really going to get a kick out of it. So.
Well, I read the original version, which was hysterical. And I thought, really? Like, it was raunchy, it was wild, it was really great. And then it's been so beautifully edited over the last year and a half. And what has emerged, the final result that I read a month ago, it really felt like medicine reading the book, the joy, laughing every few minutes. Like, when do you read a book that you laugh much of the time, and you're also being like taught, and you're learning, and you're understanding, and you're being given solutions? It's really tremendous, and I recommend it highly. It's so unusual, like right? He's a one of a kind. So this book is a one of a kind, and I think it's going to just be wonderfully received, and medicine for the world.
You know what's amazing about this, Doc? And the same thing happened to me when I wrote Angels Walking With Us. It just flowed. I don't think I could write that book again. It was divinely inspired. And that's exactly what happened to you. And Lee just echoed that. So it's just one of those things where it comes through you and you just know it. You and I have both experienced that, and it is a true gift.
And one thing I don't think you know, George, because I don't think I've shared this, but when Lee and I met for the first time, we actually had a very profound angelic experience. Now, when I was very young, when I was 6 years old, I used to, speak to God and pray to God and, hear things as a child. And things went on as the years went on, and I developed different spiritual relationships. But when we first met, there was this experience that happened. And it was literally, and everyone in the room, I thought it was just me experiencing it. Everyone in the room experienced it. It was literally like the angel of love came down in the room. Lee's brother and sister-in-law were there with Lee. And it was the most profound, loving, experience. And I thought, oh, it's just me opening my heart. And then I found out everyone in the room experienced it. And I wrote a song called Angel of Love, which, by the way, is in the book. I won't explain how it gets linked in. You'll see it when you read the book. I'm just hoping that, and I have words and music for it, but I'm hoping actually some of my musician friends at some point may help me a little bit and actually get this out.
There's people put on earth for reasons. I believe this. Doc and I just spoke briefly about it. Michael is through his entire book. So when you look at manuscripts that are 4,000 years old, right? We go back to them and you see that these figures are in those manuscripts. They're still with us here today. And they're working through folks like you, mega healers. Your family's a healing. You're a healing family, actually.
Yes. Well, and during this time when the earth is going through such, difficult changes with the climate, when these kids were coming in with climate grief, I had to figure out, first of all, what were they experiencing? So I dove into the climate literature back in 2018 to actually verify why they had this grief. And then when I read the science, I went, oh my God, they're right. We're really in trouble. And then I prayed for answers, and I realized there were solutions, by the way, that are still not being discussed in the mainstream media. So part of the reason I'm getting this book out and hope to get, on a circuit where I can get on the news programs and channels is simply because that everything we're reading now about the increased wildfires and hurricanes and droughts and climate is increasing Lyme and tick-borne diseases. Just last year alone, we had almost 500,000 cases, 500,000. That's not even counting the other tick-borne diseases with environmental toxins. There's a lot that's happening to the earth, but one of the most important things is the sea level rise that now they just came out last week that said, we've got a minimum 1 to 2 foot sea level rise in the next 30 years. Now, I wrote the book 4 years ago when I started, and I talked about the first and second great climate change. The book takes place in 2037, where I'm born as a half alien, half human who's come to save the planet, right? So without giving away too much, but people who want to see the videos on it, they can go to www.starseed-revolution.com. Starseed, STARSEED-revolution.com. They can get more info, but I did find solutions. So, now I'm hoping to get on the circuit and highlight like geoengineering solutions in the Arctic before the Thwaites Glacier breaks off. It just surprises me, like people are accepting that this is our fate, and it doesn't have to be. And that's why I'm really calling upon my spiritual family and the angels at this point for support, because this feels like it's almost the largest thing that I have to do to help the planet. I mean, I've tried to help with Lyme, I tried to help with COVID-19 and found answers, but this almost feels like, the greatest challenge that I've almost had to face. And I know I'm not doing it alone. And it feels like now our spiritual family needs to come together because the planet is in trouble and we can make a difference. So, I'm in deep prayer about this, and I hope people will get it and read it to learn about the solutions. And that I'm hoping that in the back of my mind, that Biden's group who listens to this will discuss geoengineering and solutions, because we can do this in Antarctica and cool down the Arctic, which is getting warmer 2 to 5 times faster than North America. And as the permafrost is melting, it's releasing methane, which is heating the Arctic 30 to 80 times more efficiently than carbon dioxide, nitric oxide 300 times more efficiently. This is speeding up. So this is the greatest existential threat we've ever faced, and we all have to come together now. But fortunately, there are solutions, and the book is about hope. It's about having you laugh while reading serious things, learning about it, but realizing there are solutions, and we need to come together to implement those solutions, and we need to do it now. Because I've been studying with Tibetan Buddhist lamas for 40 years, and prior to that, the TM City technique, Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, I've taken a lot of the spiritual information I've learned over more than 40 years, and I put some basic meditation techniques in the book that I learned from these enlightened masters, which they've taught us that if instituted on a global level, where enough people were doing this meditation and practice with visualization, it could actually change through quantum physics. We're trying to change the outside reality from the inside out. It's an important point, because that's really actually one of the big messages, is I'm empowering people of how we can make a change from the inside out to actually affect physical reality.
I can't tell you how excited I am about the release of this book, because I truly see it as an incredible way for you to continue the healing process in a whole different method. So you've done it in many different ways, in many different forms. Lee's done it in many different ways, in different forms, but this kind of brings all of it together. It's truly exciting. I cannot thank you enough for being here as my guest today on Angels Walking With Us. What else would you like to say, Doc?
I think we've said it, George. I just want to give my appreciation to you. You're a beautiful man with a beautiful heart and mind. And you and I have a brothership over the years, and just want to thank you for having me on. It's been a real pleasure.
We're going to put a link to your website here on this YouTube video. And I want to say to all of my subscribers, please click the subscribe button and the little bell so you're notified of all the new videos that are coming out, and be notified. Doc, Lee, thank you. You are Angels Walking With Us. And thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you, George. The same to you. Bless you, angel walking on earth.